Welcome to Earth, a love story. I'm your host, Robin Lassiter. This week is a shorty little itty bitty episode just for patrons. I'm sitting in my dome. It's a beautiful day. Storms are rolling in. You might hear some thunder in the background. And it's my absolute favorite time of year. I've been preparing for some pretty intense spiritual practice and some pretty intense spiritual gateways and thresholds that I'm entering into. But I know that it's something that I feel incredibly connected to. And so I am continuing down this path with great faith and some trepidation and, a lot of humility. It's been a while since I've been out of my depth spiritually. Honestly, I've gotten so used to ontological shock and used to dealing with the things that come from being an experiencer that I maybe was getting a little cocky, like bring it on, I can take it. And I can tell you that in this lineage, on this pathway so far, I've come up against things that have really brought me into new territories and felt very wild and edgy and powerful. And all of that to say that it's particularly during the month of September taking up quite a bit of my time and resources. And so there will be fewer podcast episodes. And also, I think that there's a lot cooking inside of me. There's a lot of richness that is kind of bubbling away and developing complexity and flavor, and that when I sort of come out on the other side of this gateway, which will be at the beginning part of October, that there will be some potentially really transformative things that I've been through. And that's exciting. That is exciting. So I hope you enjoy this week's episode and stay tuned for all the exciting things. These are the things I wake up thinking about in no particular order. Forest fires, lights in the sky, the military-industrial complex, Starlink satellite trains, the honeycomb matrix, AI, my dog, flooding, TikTok, and the move from connection with place and the land and our people to connection with short-form video on tiny screens in our hands. What we are losing as each species dies. The Gulf Stream shutting down as early as 2025, the war in Ukraine and the unthinkable horrors that are happening there. Housing costs, UAPs, congressional hearings, the dramatic rise of orbs and sightings in contact with other beings, public disclosure and the other disclosure that is happening or has already happened through the bodies and psyches and lives of regular folks. The rise of fascism, racism, how someone asked my yoga teacher if she would turn him into a snake if he did yoga, how someone asked my yoga teacher if she would start worshiping the devil if she did yoga, what it must have been like to be so connected to the earth and our place in it, that we could track the subtle 19-year metonic cycles of the moon and make little altars to that on hidden, hard-to-get-to cliff faces. The grays and mantis beings and out-of-body experiences and ontological shock. How humans are incredible creators and want to be good and do good, and how hopeful that is. How men are coming to work with me now to journey down into their own soft bellies, and how beautiful and tender that is. If the rain will come today and quench the thirst of this land. Unhoused and drug-addicted and mentally unwell people. The four who are one. How our natural magic and intuition and trance states and animism and mystical birthright was squashed and shamed and called primitive and uncivilized by rational materialism and patriarchy, and now we have to claw our knowing back even in our own minds. The subjugation of the feminine, and how totally successful that was, and how it wasn't just the feminine that was subjugated, but deference to the cycles and the seasons and the rhythms of the earth, and also grief and rage and complexity and softness as strength and death as a natural part of life. The fear and sadness I see in people's eyes, And back to death. If we could just face the fact that we will die, then maybe we would see the simplicity of how it could be here on this planet, and maybe we would remember that we belong to each other. How I love the smell of roasted green chilies and peaches in late summer in Colorado. What is going on with that trash island in the ocean? That I'll have to pick tomatoes again today. How it seems that since I've been eating food from my garden, I can feel the nutrients and minerals returning to my body and blood and bones, and I'm not as hungry anymore. How there's no such thing as an inanimate object. The kindness of those who have walked me through this hard life, and how I want to repay that kindness. How I have work to do, clients to see and things to write, and I need to meditate and make offerings on my altar and catch up with my friends and take my dog for a walk. How we don't have a community structure to process grief so shattering that it kills us, so we have to go through that alone. How I should work on creating that community structure, because if I don't, or you don't, or if they don't, no one will, and it just won't exist, and how all of these things need to move through each of us, and that's how things happen. How maybe I should get a book launch together. And finally, again, about those Starlink satellites, and what must the oldest living culture on Earth, the indigenous people of Australia, who have lived in that place for nearly 60,000 years. 60,000 years, and we can't even remember 15,000 years back to the Great Fall and what happened and why it was all lost. I think of those people watching and feeling the sky fill up with a network of satellites, and how that decision wasn't made by the people of Earth, but by just a few guys. And I think of how there are tens of thousands of pieces of space junk up there now, and what in the actual fuck have we done? I wake up thinking about this stuff, and then I get up and meditate and make offerings on the altar and try to feel the air on my skin and try to remember a time when we were so connected to the land that we could track long cycles and the ravens spoke to us and we listened. We are not in that time now. We are in this time, this place, and this way of being, and it is heartbreaking. That's why the feminine and the goddess and the things that were shoved into the underworld with her are important to this time on the planet, because I believe, and this is a hill I will die on, that before we can stand up and rise and make different choices and save the earth and remember who we are and what is important, we must go through what Francis Weller calls the gates of grief. We must feel the weight of loss. We must feel somatically in our flesh and blood and bone bodies the truth of suffering. We must let it break us and rearrange us, and we must be initiated back into our bodies, which are the bodies of the earth, and become tempered and strong enough to bear the unbearableness. We must die before we die, and then we have nothing to lose. No reason not to stand up for the vulnerable. No reason not to let our wide open hearts full of fierce softness be our strength. No reason not to stand up for the animals and plants and water and skies and all of the other beings, seen and unseen, with whom we share this planet. No reason not to move from me to we. With relief, we see that we are not separate, solitary things. We are communal, relational, shivering and quivering with each touch on the web of life that we are enmeshed within. Special thanks, as always, to Morgan Jenks, who provides our beautiful soundscapes. You can find out more information at patreon.com/Robin Lassiter. If you'd like to book a one-on-one session with me for a past life or between life regression, work around becoming an embodied mystic, and more, please visit honeyheart.org.